Welcome to this next training video in the Unlocking Your Crypto Journey educational series. Today, we're going to be talking about risk management and understanding your personal risk tolerance. Now, even though this is something you may have thought about before, it might not be something that you really think about on a daily basis unless you are an active investor or trader. So, to break down all this information, I'm going to be joined by Jimmy from the Billy Goat Tales team. We're going to break it all down for you and help you to understand how you can decide what your own personal risk tolerance actually is. Let's get into the video. Welcome back, everybody. Today, we're going to be talking risk management. We want to know, what is our own personal risk tolerance, right? I know you might have been exposed to this kind of information in the past, but unless you're dealing with it every day, you might not really understand it and really get to feel it. To help me break all this information down, Jim is here from Billy Goat Tales. Jim, welcome. Appreciate you being here, man.
Thanks, Keith. Glad to be here and help out with this series. I've caught a few of them leading up to this point. You know, here at Billy Goat Tales, we're all about education and helping people. I'm not asking for anything in return. We just want to give you, good information or at least our experiences for people to be able to pull from. Maybe you'll find some common things that we share and maybe help you work through those things.
Excellent. I really appreciate everybody at Billy Goat Tales. You guys have been great. And if you've been starting this series straight from the beginning, you know these guys have been in here this whole time, and I'm sure they'll be here until the very end. But I want to give a special thank you to Jimmy, because he has literally rearranged his schedule to make sure that he was here today, to make sure that this video came out on time. So I really appreciate you, man. Thank you so much.
No worries at all, man. Like I said, I'm glad to be here and share what I can.
All right. Well, I'll tell you what, let's start off, because again, this is the first time you've been on my channel, and this could be somebody just finding this video direct. So why don't you tell people a little bit about you, and then we'll jump into the topic matter.
Sure. My name's Jimmy Wyble. I'm a founding partner and president of CAM's Blue Wire Technology, an IT cybersecurity company. We were founded in 2002. I guess we have been in business now 23 years. Additionally, I'm a co-founder of Billy Goat Tales, Giver's Game, where we try to educate and make connections and just help people out achieve goals, whether you're doing trading or trying to start a business, need some connections. You know, that's what we're here for. My door is always open to folks. I've been in many different business types. I've run many different businesses, and if you're struggling or just need some input or a different perspective on what you're trying to do, I'm always available at jimmy@billygoattales.io. Feel free to email me, and I will do my best to, either set up a time to discuss or just answer your questions in emails.
That's awesome. And I probably should point out, and again, links to Billy Goat Tales in the description. I'll mention that throughout this video, but Billy Goat Tales is primarily about the crypto space and people coming into the crypto space, but you guys don't just focus on that. I know I'm getting off topic already, but would you mind just kind of like telling everybody about that, just so they get an idea?
I mean, really, we're about, personal development, whether it's in the crypto space or, in the business space, myself and Billy, and probably more so Billy likes to flip businesses. That's kind of his MO, is to start a business, get it cash flowing, make it attractive for a buyer, and then sell it. Whereas I'm kind of on the opposite end of the spectrum, to where I'm going to pour everything I have into it, build it up, hang on to it, and turn that cash flow into income. And Billy is really good with it. He's probably owned, I don't know, 10 or 15 different businesses, everything from gas stations to subways. Whereas I've been probably more involved in service-based businesses. I like those type of businesses more so than just a product-based business. But through both of our experiences, I mean, we have phone calls, just off the cuff phone calls all the time, and be able to pull from one another's past experiences to bounce things off of each other. I mean, that's invaluable information. I know a lot of times I might be headed down a road thinking a certain way, and I call up Billy, and then it's like, oh man, yeah, that was a good perspective. Maybe I should consider, some of these other options. So, having a peer group of folks that you can lean on, that just contributes to success. Not everyone's going to have the right answers, but I like taking data, accumulate as much data as I can, and then making educated decisions,
Right.
whether that be in crypto or business, or should I or shouldn't I, or any of that type of stuff.
Thank you for doing that and indulging me in going down that rabbit hole a little bit. And thank you to everybody who's watching this video for allowing us to do that. I know you came here for risk management stuff, and we're talking about Billy Goat Tales, but I would encourage you, if you're not already following those guys, you do so. Again, links are in the description, so please go ahead and do that. All right, let's get into the actual subject matter, I guess. People need to be able to wrap their head around how to invest, and part of that is understanding what is your risk profile, what is your actual individual risk tolerance, because everybody's is different, and there are a lot of different factors that go into determining that, and we're going to touch on those today and suss those out a little bit. But I think what we're going to do is we're going to start off with a definition. And Jimmy, if after we throw that definition out there, you want to add anything, subtract anything, you feel free. As we go into it, I just want to let everybody know that I had Venice AI help me to put this together. So that's what you're going to be seeing here on the screen as I bring it up. Okay, let's start with what it gave for a definition. It said risk tolerance is an individual's or an investor's ability. It's a key concept in finance and investing, and it helps to determine the types of investments and strategies that suit a person's comfort level with uncertainty and potential losses. Anything you want to add into that, Jim?
No, I mean, I think that's a great definition. I think you'll find, or at least I have, that the younger you are and the less money you have, the bigger appetite for risk that you have. The older you get and the more money you have, the less risk you're
Right.
willing to take on.
Right.
And I think, and I use this analogy all the time. Have you ever seen a football team come on the field and do nothing but throw Hail Marys every play? And the answer is no, you've never
Obviously
seen
not.
it.
Yeah.
And then if you look at through a whole season of football of all the Hail Marys that were actually thrown, how many of them yielded a touchdown, right?
Right. Right.
So I am, of an age, I'm 55 now, or almost 55. I have a low risk appetite. I've got money in the bank. I own a business. I have assets. I don't need to throw Hail Marys. All I need is 10 first downs, and I'm going to score a touchdown. But I think from an investing standpoint, that there needs to be an array of risk levels that you're taking. And this is something we talked about on our space last night, was having a good foundation. You don't build a house by starting with the roof. We don't just start throwing wood on the ground, right? I mean, we lay a
Why
good
not?
foundation, or at least we try to.
Right. Right.
And I think in investing, those low risk items, buying in the top, call it 10 of crypto, 10 or 15, maybe 20, buying blue chip stocks. It would have to be something absolutely, devastating happen in the market, but blue chip stocks are going to be here tomorrow.
Right.
I think too many folks get caught up in the FOMO, get caught up in social media, seeing all the wins, right? I'd love to see someone start a social media channel and highlight nothing but their losses.
Yeah. There wouldn't
Right?
be much viewership on that, probably.
Right,
No.
probably not. And it's like most things in life, everyone is focused on the destination and not the journey.
Yep.
It's about the journey. It's not about the destination. And, again, I mean, just scoring some first downs time and time and time again, taking lower risk trades, over a period of time, may or may not. I mean, you might get lucky and throw $100 or $1,000 into a meme coin and it takes off and you
Right.
make some cash, but you're just not going to do that every time. So I think it really starts off, you got to have a plan. You need to have a long-term plan and you need to have that short-term plan. You need to have that low-hanging fruit. The low-hanging fruit is what keeps you going, right? I mean, it's those little wins.
Yes.
It's almost like golf. I'm not a great golfer. I'm an over par golfer, but I get a couple of pars in a round. I mean, I'm going to come back.
Right. Right.
And I think people need to really think about things in those terms, whether you're starting a business or whether you're just trading crypto or making investments do I need to throw a Hail Mary here? Do I need to? Need and want, two totally different things. But I think, once you have a good foundation, that's when we start increasing our risk appetite. So I know in this crypto market, as weird as it's been, but
Yeah.
the more I push back from the table, and I've been saying this for a couple of years, I'm kind of still feeling 2 years since I've said it or I posted it on social media that I think we're in a super cycle. I think this cycle is going to run longer. I don't think necessarily we'll see the same percentage of gains that we've seen, in past markets. That's been proven time and time again, diminishing returns every cycle. But I think that being on the conservative, moderate side of things is typically going to yield wins, and
Yes.
it's just a matter of being patient. And when you think you're being patient, be more patient.
That's right.
And when you think you're being more patient, be more patient. If anything, crypto has taught me patience. Having kids has taught me patience, but crypto has taught me to be a whole lot more patient. Everybody wants it now.
Yes.
And, it's just like with anything in life. If you want to, everyone sees Michael Jordan's shoe deals and him flying through the air and all of the things that you see on TV, right? It's the gameplay is what people are basing a lot of their decisions on in life, right?
Yes.
But what they haven't seen is Michael showed up an hour before everyone in practice. He
Yep.
stayed 2 hours over after practice,
Yep.
and that is the difference maker. So, when we're talking about risk or you're sitting here thinking, I'm going to put this money in a meme coin because I really need a 20x and to make this, big gain, when all he did was he put in an extra 2-3% every single
Yep.
day. And that just
Consistent.
goes back to consistency and
Yep.
discipline and all the things that we talk about on Billy Goat Tales all the time. They're part of our cornerstones, our 10 cornerstones.
Yes.
And we know that if you practice those things religiously, you will be successful. Are you going to make mistakes? Absolutely. That's another thing I said on our space last night. Get comfortable with losing. The
Yep.
more comfortable you are with losing, the more winning you're going to do. Right?
That's where the education is, in the losses. People don't like hearing that, but that's just the facts. That's
Yeah.
just,
The only time you lose is when you don't learn.
yep.
And
Facts.
and people need to understand, truly understand that. People hear the words, but they don't practice them, very often. And that is something that, I'm a very disciplined person. I had financial goals for this cycle. I'm sticking to them. I'm involved with Randy Hipper, really deeply. I'm involved with Sin City Crypto very deeply. And I hear all the chatter, the same chatter everyone else does, but I don't care. The things that they're talking, I don't care. I have my plan. I'm sticking to my plan. Oh, look, he just made $1 million. Good for him.
Good for him. Yep.
I'm
Yep.
not letting that affect my decision making or my risk taking for that matter. People just really need to weigh those things out. When we're talking about taking risk, again, the rules apply, whether you're starting a business, whether you're trading, manage that risk smartly, you know.
Agreed. Agreed. Listen, folks, We're like 15 minutes into this video, and you just got some serious alpha right there in nothing more than a conversation. And by the way, Jimmy's mentioned a couple of times in that conversation about an X space. Billy Goat Tales every Tuesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern time.
Yep.
Put out an X space. It's different topics all the time, but I will make sure that the one that came out last night that he's referencing is the links are in the description. Make sure you go check that out. It was great. And then you can hear more about Jim's story for that matter as well, where he was talking about his business experience and so on. So thank you for going down that road, Jim. Appreciate that.
Oh, yeah. No worries at all, man. No worries.
Okay, we're going to talk about some of the factors that weigh into understanding your risk tolerance, which honestly, he just mentioned so many of them, just about every one of them, I think, actually. So, but let's, for official, getting it out here, getting this information into this video, let's bring that back up on the screen and suss it out a little bit more. Matter of fact, you know what? I think what we'll do, Jim, is we'll talk through I'll mention each of these real quick, and then we can come back and iron out any other information you want to add to what you just said. So some of the factors that will influence your actual risk tolerance include your investment goals. If you don't have goals and you're coming into the space, you are going to get lost and crushed. And again, revert back to the video with Crypto Billy about having good goals and the mindset. What is your investment horizon? That also ties into number 4, which is how old are you? Okay, you may have a longer timeline. Like, Jimmy and I probably don't have as long a timeline as some of you who are watching this. For example, BC Port Corp, who's been here before, he's in his 20s, so he's got a much longer timeline than we have. So what is your horizon? Not to mention, what's your financial situation? Everybody's finances are different. You got to plug in your financial situation to figure out what's right for you. What is your personality and emotional status? Some people just thrive on that risk, kind of like Jimmy was talking about earlier, and others, not so much. So where do you fit on that particular spectrum? What knowledge do you have with regard to investing? What's your experience? And to that end, if you look at the last one here, past experience, good or bad? Have you only been investing through something like a 401k or an IRA? That is going to matter. And finally, dependents and other obligations, because again, it will affect your household finances and your risk tolerance. Jimmy, I know you had talked about a lot of that when you were talking earlier, but do you want to suss out any more of that now that we've kind of like at least laid out the groundwork here for everybody?
Well, let's start with the first one, investment goals. That's your roadmap, right? We need to set goals for ourselves. We need to have that end game goal. But again, we need to set some low hanging fruit goals for ourselves, right? So if I want to make $1 million, trading crypto or making investments, doesn't just have to be crypto.
Right.
Well, I've got to figure out how to make 100 grand first. And before that, I've got to figure out how to make 10 grand first, right?
Right.
So, breaking it down very simply like that for yourself will give you that roadmap. But you can't just have one goal. My goal can't be I want to make $1 million in the next 5 years. That is the ultimate goal. But again, that goal is way out there. Maybe only making $50,000 or $60,000 a year. Achieving that goal in 5 years is not going to be easy, and if you're going to set that type of goal for yourself and you don't have a lot of money to invest, then that's going to definitely put you moving the needle over into that higher risk category. But I think over time, if you're starting high risk, we should be scaling it back every time we're winning, every time we're building that big nest egg. We need to be taking risk off.
Yes.
So again, you need to have a plan that aligns with your investment goals. Set that long-term plan, set a midterm plan, and set a plan that you can achieve in a short period of time. I'm motivated by the dangling carrot. It's right there. It's something obtainable, but that should align with that long-term goal.
You want to be moving in the right direction. Yeah.
Which actually, that again turns into that investment horizon, right? We're older, let's face it, we probably got wishfully thinking 20 good years left in me. I
See,
mean,
I've come to the point of not trying to put years on it. I say, okay, there are fewer days ahead than there are behind me at this point. I got
exactly, exactly. So, for us, if you're finding yourself in your 40s and 50s concerned with, am I going to work for the rest of my life? And again, that kind of just lines with your life goals, kind of, we were talking earlier and I said, there may come a day where I step away from my company, but I'll never retire.
right.
I'm not going to, buy an RV, load the family up and tour the country type of retire, move to Florida type of retire. I'm always going to be doing something. That's just what makes me tick. Maybe that is your goal, is to get the RV, load the family up, live on the road, be a fun life. I mean, I've seen a lot of people on YouTube doing it,
It was my
living.
sister. My sister did it. She's still doing it. God bless her. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I mean, again, that kind of plays into, having the roadmap, knowing how long we have to achieve it, having that, investment horizon, and then, your financial situation playing into that. So, if you're working a fiat job and you're finding, I don't have enough to put in, well, number one, let's be patient, right? If I can put in some money into crypto and stake it, earn, 15%. Take Atom, for instance. I mean, I think Atom is paying about 15% right now on Coinbase, or if you have a Coinbase One account. Any business leader will tell you, if you have a business earning 20% a year and you're making 20% more year over year, dude, that's money right there.
Right.
I mean, 20% is a great gain, whether you're in business or whether you're in crypto. So thinking you have to get a 2, 3, 4, 5x, I mean, all of that compounds. And if you're disciplined and say, hey, I'm going to invest this 10 grand and I'm not going to pull any money out, win or lose on my trades for a period of 5 years. Every time you're making a win, that egg is getting bigger, right? That boulder is getting bigger. And once you
Yes.
get that thing rolling down the hill and you manage the risk, that boulder grows exponentially over time. And it was a tough thing for me being young and hearing all this stuff. But it's stuff you have to do. Again, going back to the football analogy, I mean, if all you're going to do is throw Hail Marys, you're not going to win. You're not going to. You might win here and there, but I think when you added it all up and the overall over 5 years of throwing Hail Marys, you're going to be down. I think there is a place for risk without a doubt. I mean, in my 401ks, in my crypto backed IRAs or stock backed IRAs, I mean, there's a percentage of risk there,
Mm-hmm.
and usually I try to limit that to 10, 15%, having that good foundation. That's where the bulk of my money is, or in low risk assets. And you hear this time and time again from people, but people don't do it. I just had a friend of mine wanted to get into Bitcoin, been talking to him about Bitcoin for 3 or 4 years. Bitcoin was sitting at 94,000 when he called me. And I was like, dude, I was telling you at 40 and 50 and
Right.
60,
Right.
just, buy. When he finally said, hey, I've got some money, I'm going to do something, it was right when everyone was kind of like, is it going to go back down into the 70s? Is it, and I
Yep.
told him, I was like, man, there's some macro things happening. I don't know if it were me, I would enter today. But if you wait, the price could go up. So, I mean, I think this is, kind of jumping forward in the list is time in the market, right? What I was trying to tell him to do is just stamp a number, stamp a DCA number. It doesn't matter what that number is
Yes.
today, you know.
Yes.
So he finally he pulled the trigger. He bought it 91,000. it went, and I told him, I was like, look, just buy a little bit right now and just wait. Let this play out over a couple of weeks. Be patient. There's no rush.
Right.
In consulting him, we kind of came to the conclusion that he had a 10-year horizon, which kind of aligned with his kids growing up, going
Yep.
to college, things like that, where you're going to need some extra money to get them through that. And, he pulled the trigger and then the price drops, and I was like, great, buy twice as much now, you know,
Yes. Yes.
um, and now now I keep checking in on him. At first he was texting me, every 5, what do I do? What do I do? And I was like, dude, just relax.
Right.
Time in the market is everything, because once you start seeing and understanding the nuances of the market, how a news story can send it either direction,
Right.
you start becoming numb to
Max.
price action, and you start seeing the big picture. When I was in my 20s, did I want to have $1 million? Absolutely, I did. But when you start running out numbers and figuring out, how much money do I need to be, raking in every month to, get to that point. And then when you start looking at those numbers, people start getting discouraged. I was like, oh, there's no way that I'll ever be able to do that. And they give up, you
Right.
know, and that's just not the thing to do. I mean, have that plan, be disciplined, stick to the plan, drown out all the noise. As much as I love going into YouTube channels and listening to people talk, when I start hearing a lot of doom and gloom on a channel, I mean, that's when I start kind of, reaching into my pocket, and getting that mentality of a 20% pullback,
Yep.
is bad. I mean, once you start seeing that as good, you're going to start winning, right?
Right. Right.
And it's a tough thing. It's even in my business, I was always the get it done guy, right? And it doesn't matter what it was, if it was fixing broke stuff or selling to a client, just wearing all the different hats you have to as an entrepreneur when you're starting out. Fast forward to today, what I had a lot of trouble with was letting go of the reins, let the horses run. Don't try to micromanage people, don't try to micromanage your portfolio. You got
Right.
to let the horses run a little bit.
It's
And
tough to
that's a
do.
tough thing. It's
Yeah.
tough,
It's
right?
tough
I
to
mean, this is
do.
my baby. I mean, I built this from nothing, and now it's something, and now you're asking me to let the horses run. No, I got to keep things under my thumb, and that's just not a great way to run a business, to manage your portfolio. It's having that plan, sticking to the plan, be disciplined in that. Typically, unless I'm jumping into something totally new, I'm not involved in, or I'm not invested in it. If it's something I'm in, then typically it's going to have to be 15% kind of got raises a brow. When I start getting into the 20 and 25% down, I'm buying, and I think, a lot of people want to jump on the altcoin train, when those things happen, but
Yes.
not take advantage of a 5 or 10% correction in Bitcoin. I mean, if anything, through this market, Bitcoin has proven it is king and
Oh yeah.
probably always will be, right? So why wouldn't you want to put something in a low risk asset to offset some of the crazy crap you're about to go off and do when you get all FOMO'd out, is putting a little bit in that safe bucket. You've
Oh,
got to spread things out across the entire field.
agreed. Agreed. Yeah. And you know what you just said, I think, plays into the next piece that Venice AI put together that I want to kind of go over. And that's basically, what are the categories of risk tolerance, just so you can kind of like piece those factors together and realize where you might fall. Now, they broke it down, or the AI broke it down pretty extensively here, but I'm going to say it basically 3 categories: conservative, moderate, and aggressive. Now, they give you a moderately conservative and a moderately aggressive, and there's examples to speak to all of that. But to me, And the older I've gotten, the more conservative I've become. And I think that's probably the case for most people. But what category do you fall into? And I know you started talking about it just a second ago there, Jimmy, but do you want to throw out a little bit more about those 3+ categories?
Yeah, I mean, I think me personally, I would probably fall into the moderate category or moderate conservative, I guess, type
Mm-hmm.
category. Me personally, you're not going to see me jumping into meme coins. If I do, I mean, put it this way, the only time I do that is when I'm cleaning up wallets. I got all these remnant things in a wallet.
Yes,
I'll consolidate that down to USDT and then throw it at something stupid, but if you're banking on that, if that
right.
is the core of what you're trying to do, because I know there's meme coin maxis out there, that's all they want to play with.
Facts.
Some of the things that play into that are desperation. Some of it is the gambling aspect, you
Sure.
know. I
Sure.
don't live in Vegas, so I can't go down the casino and gamble, but this is a legal, easy way for me to do it. And I'm not, I don't want to totally, dump on meme coins, but at minimum, it needs to have some type of utility. I mean, certain projects out there, it's just, a piece of pop culture, it just has zero function or utility to it. And I'm just not a big fan of that, type of stuff.
I
I would
understand.
say my aggressive categories would be, AI, gaming, uh, I have a whole lot of investment in Aave, in DeFi, which would
Sure.
definitely be back on that, moderate side of things. Because again, I mean, if I can sail the ship, at a moderate pace and weather storms just fine, I'm okay with that. I know it doesn't matter what crypto does. I've already established my solid foundation. Crypto could go to zero. I'm still going to retire a millionaire. I mean, it's just that simple. So, you know, I understand some people being young feel they need to ape into meme coins and get that initial thing, right? Because the more money you have, the easier it is to make money. I mean, there's just no denying that, right? I woke up one morning 2 months ago, decided me and my son were going to do a sports card business. Did it. Got LLCs, got the bank account. I'm in a position I can just do things like that.
Right.
And not everyone's in that position, but you've got to grab that low hanging fruit, get those easy to obtain goals achieved. And it's just all on the roadmap to getting to where you want to be. And just
So
taking on a bunch of risk, again, can it pay off? Yes, it can, but the likelihood is low.
you know what? Could I get you off on a small tangent? I know we're talking risk, but I think this kind of plays into it a little bit. On a few of the videos that I have already aired and actually are going to be airing after this one, some of the guests talked about thinking about cryptocurrency as a business and
Absolutely.
operating in that kind of mindset. Would you mind talking about that a little bit? Because I think you'd be the perfect person to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I think, operating anything, whether you're investing, running a business or any of that, and having a business mindset is really important. I mean, discipline plays into that, right? One of my favorite sayings that was passed down to me by my business partner, who at this point I'm pretty sure is a billionaire. He's the largest minority
Awesome.
owner of the Texans football team. So, I mean, he's got a buck or two. And he said to me, it was probably 15 or 16 years ago, some of the best deals that I've ever done were the ones I didn't do.
Huh. Facts. There
And when he
you
said
go.
that, it was like just this aha moment, right? I mean, every opportunity that lands in front of you should be explored, but
Oh,
not
yeah,
necessarily exploited, right?
exactly.
There are, and it's taken time to be able to recognize this, but there's certain type of clients I can tell after talking to them a little bit, these are clients I don't want, you know.
Yes.
I mean, I'm going to do the work, and especially in the business I am in, in cybersecurity and IT, everything is pants on fire. I need it now. That's just something that we deal with on a daily basis in this business. There have been many a clients, there have been many a deals put in front of me that look lucrative, sound lucrative, but there was always, you got to trust your gut, right? There was something
Yeah.
underlying there that I was just like, man, I'm going to do the work. I can tell I'm going to be chasing my money,
Yes.
and that's the worst place to be, as a business owner is chasing money you've already earned. I think with a business approach, it naturally kind of puts you in a more conservative bucket.
That's true.
I can think back to the very early days of Blue Wire, where, and I've told this story before too. I mean, I didn't wake up and say, hey, I'm going to, start an IT and cybersecurity company. I mean, I got my first motorcycle at 9. I got my first computer at 10. I wrote my first program by the time I was 12, but it was
Wow.
always a card that I had never played. I never worked in IT up until a year before I started this company. And for me, it was it was like one of the last pure things in life, right? It wasn't corrupted by money. It was just something I enjoyed doing. And being exposed to that at a very young age, there were courses in the 80s. you
Right.
know,
Right.
uh, I mean, home computing was a brand new thing. So I think you find people my age that are in IT, they didn't go to college. I didn't go to
Yep.
college, and I turned out just fine. I think it kind of boils down to how bad do you want it. And if you're waking up every day and saying, how bad do I want this? I want it bad. I want to get up. I'm going to do something different. I'm going to, advance the football 1 yard. I don't need to go 50. I'm trying to get those first downs, and I've applied that to business, to life, to investing. And I just think it's a solid foundation, and a solid mindset to be in, especially if you're going to be in crypto, because
Yeah. Facts.
crypto will drain the life out of you.
Yes,
But
it can.
time in the market, those 20% dips don't seem as bad, and then your mindset changes to, well, 30% dip isn't that bad. And hey, that's a real opportunity right there.
Yeah, thank you. Exactly.
And it's a tough thing, man. It's a mindset change. I've moved my crypto into an LLC.
Yes.
I run it as a business. If you're just willy-nilly with your money out there and you're not dropping it into physical buckets, I've got 3 or 4 different checking accounts. I've moved all of my assets into my holdings company. And it's, again, that's kind of risk protection right there. By
Yep.
by setting up LLCs and doing those things, I'm not exposing my personal stuff. So, one thing that I've really focused on over the last few years is protecting that, right? Forming LLCs, moving assets into those LLCs, setting up trust, mitigating risk, not only for myself, but for my son, when that day comes and I'm not around.
Yep.
Having all those assets roll up into a trust keeps all of the creditors away, right? I mean, my assets don't go to probate. He's getting nice
Yes.
checks on a monthly basis.
Yep.
You've got
And
to manage risk in all aspects of life.
facts. And this is not the first time. If you started this series from the beginning, this isn't the first time you're hearing about this. Daniel Diaz spoke about this in the episode that I did with him. And as I told you then, I'll tell you now, we're going to be revisiting this topic in greater detail. Again, this is a more advanced topic, so it's further down the line, but I so appreciate the fact, Jim, that you just put that out there, and thank you for indulging me in that question, because I think the more we put it out there, I'm hoping the more people will start to wrap their head around thinking about this space that way. So
Yeah, and I mean, even Billy will tell you, I mean, he's not, but he likes to gauge, feared and greed in it index. When it gets down into the teens, well, he starts getting excited,
Yeah.
whereas a lot of people are getting a
Yeah, that
fear.
running around with their hair on fire. Yeah.
Yeah. I've seen people make sizable investments in solid projects and get impatient and then sell their position. And then 2 months later, if they would have just been patient, got the result they were looking for.
Right.
I mean, there's no good answer of how do I do this, right? I mean, it doesn't matter if you have money, you don't have money. I mean, you've got to figure it out for yourself.
Yes.
And having the roadmap, managing risk, and then capitalizing on opportunities. That's everything. I mean, it doesn't matter if it's investing or running a business. I mean, we've been in situations where another company left a client high and dry. In those situations, a client calls us up, they've got their back up against the wall. I can step in there and charge them double, because I know they're in a bad spot and they're not going to get out of it without my help. Or I could do it for little to nothing, show them what I can do, give them the opportunity to build the trust with the client, and understand where we're coming from as a company. I see that as more of an opportunity than charging someone a whole bunch of money, right? Because
Right.
if I charge them a whole bunch of money, that's going to be a one-time thing. If I do a good job and charge them a little money and really hold their hand through a bad situation and get them back good, that kind of stuff sells itself, right? They're going to buy more services. They're going to buy more computers. They're, I'm
Right.
building that trust in myself, because at the end of the day, I don't care where you're offering a service or whether you're offering a product. People are buying you,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Um,
Those
uh,
relationships are the key.
right. I mean, I can go to any grocery store and get eggs,
Yep.
but I like HEB, and that's where I go buy my eggs, you know.
Yep.
Or if you're in the service-based business like I am, being very white glovey, hands-on. Every time the phone rings, I'm there, being dependable, all of that, and just having a great relationship with the clients. I mean, I tell my guys, we've got almost 40 guys working for us now. I tell them all the time, having a great relationship with your client is almost more important than fixing the broke stuff.
Then the actual problem. Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
I'm going to get more chain. When the crap hits the fan, I'm going to get more chain, more time, to work through those problems. And it's just a win-win situation. I mean, ultimately, that's all we're trying to do is earn people's trust. And once you have that, it's a delicate thing, you know.
Yes.
But once you have that, you've got a client. I've been very fortunate and have fallen into some. I wouldn't necessarily say the Enron situation was great, but it was great for me personally because I got introduced to Ken and Linda Lay. I did all of their personal IT business work outside of Enron before the crap hit the fan. I was sitting in their house when
Right.
all of that came about, which was a whole wild story in itself. Seeing this on TV happening, and I'm literally sitting in the
And you're
folks'
like,
house. Yeah, this is like interactive TV, But that has led to me meeting my current business partner, which has led to meeting all kinds of people in the energy industry. So was that a great situation? No, it wasn't. But out of it, so much good came, you know.
right.
And I always like telling that story. People, I think it still stings, especially here in Houston. There were a lot of people that had large portions of their retirement in Enron stock.
Right.
And it was a terrible situation. Now, what they were doing, for what it's worth, was absolutely brilliant. Wasn't necessarily right, but that whole idea was just absolutely brilliant. And if you've never watched The Smartest Guys in the Room, that documentary, it really outlines, the idea they had and how they executed it, which ultimately led to their demise. Uh,
Right.
but being around, very, very wealthy people, man, I guarantee you that I've gotten 2 or 3 college educations when it comes to business, the things that I've learned, not a classroom environment, I mean, this is just
Right.
time in the market, right? I mean,
Right.
time in the market, seeing these things happen, see how they analyze and look at businesses and manage their risk. We had one very, very recently. I don't want to mention the company name, but they were involved in crypto mining. I have some really good contacts in that space. I mean, my company, we provide IT and cybersecurity services for power generation facilities all over the country.
Nice.
We're real heavy up kind of in the Northeast, New Jersey or Pennsylvania and New York, Connecticut. We have a heavy concentration there, and are going to these facilities and seeing almost every one of them have some type of either an AI data center or a mining operation on site, you
Wow.
know, and it's incredible to see and having that exposure in that space. This company comes along and they were a multifaceted company. They had figured out a way to extract oil from depleted oil wells. And a depleted oil well is like only 20% of the oil is out. At the point it's 20% or more, it's considered depleted because it's difficult to get it out of the ground, right? It's thick, it's gummy. But these folks had figured out how to extract this stuff in a cost effective way. Additionally, they were developing some AI data centers, of which we were going to end up getting some cybersecurity services out of. But I had a friend that had a patent on what they call an energy offloading system. And that is essentially where the power plant makes power and puts it to the grid 80% of the time. And then if they get the call to shut the turbines down, then they keep them spooling and just ship that power over to the data center. Well, he has a patent on that process. And they were
Hmm.
very interested, of course, because that was kind
Yeah.
of what they were going to do. They were using carbon credits and using a multi-stage generation system. So one turbine's putting off steam, that steam is recaptured, that steam runs a second turbine. The exhaust that comes out, they were capturing the carbon and then they could sell carbon credits to other companies that needed them, and
Hmm.
I was like, wow, I mean, this
Right.
is this is marrying all these different worlds. For me personally, yeah, it's IT, it's crypto, it's mining. I was heavily mining there for a long time. Now I've kind of shifted over to nodes. I'm probably running, I think, 50 some odd nodes at this point. But this idea, I mean, I was eating up everything they were cooking.
Yeah.
Fast forward 4 years, they're out of business. And I went back to him and I was like, man, this just seemed like a really great opportunity and this and that. And, what was y'all's thinking? Why didn't you guys do something, with these folks? There was various reasons given, but ultimately the risk was too much.
Hmm.
They didn't have established contracts. It was still in that infant. It would have been
Right.
more of an angel investment than a real investment. And that angel investment is someone with a lot of money just giving you money and they really don't care whether they see it back or not. And
Right.
chances are they're not. But just having, again, that, I got FOMO'd in that. I was like, wow, shiny new thing and new
Yep.
technology and this, that, and the other. And the end result was, golly, they were right again. you know so I've valued those relationships that I've built over the years and the people I've met, and just again, just pulling sitting back, not saying a whole lot, and just watching what's happening in front of you. Man, that's just invaluable. And it's
Yes.
taught me a lot about risk, and taking risk. There was a day, you want to jump out of an airplane? Yeah, let's do it. I mean, I'll take on all the risk. I road raced motorcycles for 10 years. I traveled all over the country doing that before I started this company. I knew the risk involved and suffered. I mean, that's kind of what ended my career, was breaking my C5 vertebrae in my neck and almost
Oh.
broke my foot off my leg. And Injuries started stacking up. I wasn't getting any younger. I knew I was never going to get picked up by a factory because of my age. They were signing up 16, 17, 18-year olds, and I'm in my late 20s, early 30s. So I knew I was always going to be a privateer. And that day just came to where I was like, I could keep going, and this can become more of a hobby because when I started it, my goal was, get to the AMA, make it to the highest level in the United States of motorcycle racing. Never got to race in an AMA race. However, I achieved the licensing portion of that. And there were some rule changes and stuff, and I had to change bikes, and it just kind of really derailed my whole racing career. And then that's when I said to myself, you know what? I pulled the IT card out of my pocket, and I was like, I've been carrying this thing for many a years. I was like, I'm going to try to go ahead and get a position in the IT space, just see if I know what I know. And we worked for that company. We worked for a company for a year. Walking into this place, they had a PC on the floor. That was their network. At the end of a year, they had 6 racks. We were hosting websites. We were hosting databases. We were providing internet to businesses in our building and a few other buildings that were close by. I mean, really turned it from a web development company into a web development / IT company. Well, we come into work one day, everyone that had manager in their name got canned. And that was on a Tuesday morning. Wednesday morning, I woke up, I went down to the bank. I had $500 to my name. I put all of that $500 into the bank account. I went and got a tax ID. And by Thursday afternoon, I had signed up all but one client from the company that had just fired me. And that's how Blue Wire came about. Then over the next 6 years, we really focused on, again, just providing a good service that was undeniable, always having the answers, always being available. And then after about 6 years of doing that, that's when my current business partner approached us and said, hey, we're doing this new thing. It's going to be IT heavy. Have you ever thought about selling Blue Wire? Well, I mean, at that time, I was working 8 to 2. I was on the golf course every afternoon by 2:30. Life was good.
Right.
I wasn't making some astronomical amount of money, but I was happy. I had what I needed. And I was kind of like, man, I don't know if I should do this. But knowing who I was getting involved with and seeing the things that they have achieved, I was like, man, you would be dumb, to not, take this opportunity. Now, I gave up controlling interest of my company. Wasn't a big deal for me. I president of the company. I still run it every day. And now that has just grown into something that, I mean, I don't have to work every day. I mean, I could step away from this company and I'm still going to earn multi 6 figures a year just on revenue, on making money.
Right.
So, my appetite for risk has dramatically dropped, I would say over the last 5 to 7 years, just because I know it doesn't matter what happens. Stock market goes to crap, fine, I've got crypto. Crypto market goes to crap, fine, I've got a business. I mean,
Right.
I've kind of got all my bases covered at this point. But, what I want to tell people is that didn't happen overnight. I didn't throw a Hail Mary. I got up every day focused on making first downs and repeatedly making first downs, getting just the 10 yards, not the 100 in one shot. And that's managing risk right there in itself. I think I've done a pretty good job of that. Do I do DGen stuff every once in a while? Well, hell yeah. I mean, I'm involved in sports cards. I mean, it's not uncommon for me to, embarrassingly enough to say, spend $10,000 on a weekend in hopes of pulling a 1 in a million card. It's fun for me, and that 10 grand is just not material in my life anymore. So
Right.
I think that's a good barometer for people, is what I'm about to invest in or what I'm about to do. Is it going to make a material difference in my life? If someone gave me $1,000 right now, would that change my life? No. Would $1 million? I mean, probably not going to change my life, but it'd be nice.
Right.
So
Right.
People need to ask themselves, and I find that even in the IT business, is that a lot of people know the answers already, but they don't know the questions to ask themselves to extract that from themselves, if that
Interesting.
makes any sense.
No, that
You
makes
know,
well, to me it makes complete sense. So hopefully everybody watching it makes complete sense. I get exactly what you're saying.
but managing risk, I didn't start making real money. And when I say real money, six figures, 100 grand a year. If you're making 100 grand a year, you're doing okay. But I didn't start really making big money until probably 10 years ago. That's when I started, really just raking in cash, more coming in than I could get rid of. Am I in a position to where I could survive a crazy weekend in Vegas? you know, I'm not, I'm not there yet. I'm not in the wealthy category yet, but being wealthy, you can weather anything, right? I mean, you just literally, to me, that is the definition of wealth, is that I can't get rid of the money quicker than when it's coming in. I mean, now you can do some crazy crap. I might start my own space program or something like that. I mean, yeah, you're going to blow through some cash like that. But the funny thing is that when I sold controlling interests of the company, I told myself, I was like, it's been almost 10 years and I had never taken anything for myself. Never had in 10 years. If I got a lump sum of money, it went right back into the company. But when I sold controlling interest, I told myself the first $100,000 that I get, I'm going to blow it. I am going to just go have some fun. I'm going to pay myself and go
Yep.
have some fun. Even at that, I'm still working. I still got a paycheck coming in, but it took me well over a year to go through $100,000 doing crazy Disney trips, doing, just crazy vacations and things like that, flying first class everywhere, eating at the finest place. I mean, I think everyone's ultimate goals might be too far fetched, or I don't know if that's the right term to use. If you want to have $100 million, the chances of people actually achieving that are slim to none. You probably got a better chance of making it into the NFL. But when you start putting things into reality, right? If I have $3 to $5 million in the bank and it's earning 12 to 15% a year, what is it on the day in and day out that I'm not going to be able to do? You know, not a lot. I
Right.
mean, if I want to get up and go to Vegas, or if I want to get up and go to New York, or do any of that time, you're going to be able to do that stuff. And I think that kind of goes back to having a good plan. If the plan is to make that $1 million, well, part of the plan should be, how do I make 100,000, and then before that should be, how do I make 10,000, and before that, how do I make 1,000? It's all stepping stones, and you can't skip any. I mean, you might get lucky, you might get a leg up, you might move through one of those stepping stones quicker, right? But you still got to touch them all, to get to the
Right.
finish line.
Right.
And that's managing your risk. I mean, that is everything. I mean, whether it's in life, it's in business, it's investing, crypto, whatever, that should be at the forefront of everyone's mind. Don't take unnecessary risk if you can't afford to lose it. I mean, so many people get so attached to the money, you know and if you find yourself attached to your money, then you shouldn't be investing, because
Right.
that tells me immediately that you need that money in the bank to pay bills and do whatever with, more so than you need to be investing. And
Right.
that's a hard hill, to be able to get over. I mean, I get it. I mean, I've lived paycheck to paycheck for
Right.
many more years of that than not, in almost 55 years. But that's where you got to have those side hustles. Those side hustles will get you over that mountain, and then that side hustle can turn into a business. And now
Yes.
you've got, so you can hire someone, and now I don't have to really be involved in this business. Well, let's go over here and do this thing. Now this is my side hustle over here.
Yeah.
It's, it's touching every step. It's not about the destination, it's about the journey,
Amen.
and then the quicker people understand that, the quicker you're going to achieve those goals. And I said it last night, if you're going to be in business, I mean, that in itself is a risk. I mean, most businesses fail before 5 years. I mean, if you've made it to
Yes.
5 years, great. Even if you're not turning a big profit, but you're in the green, you've survived 5 years, you're through boot camp.
Yeah.
Now
Yes.
let's go to the battlefield and do that. People always want to skip boot camp, right? It's the hardest part, but it's the best part. That's where all your knowledge comes from. That's where your character is shaped and developed,
They
and
call it basic training for a reason.
exactly. And I'm not a military guy, and I can see that.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, folks, if you didn't absorb all that alpha right there, you need to rewatch that section because that was awesome. And thank you, Jimmy, for sharing that. And I'd like to just add one more piece. Now, as of the recording of this video, the community video, Finding Your People video, has not aired yet. It's coming. Make sure you're watching for it. But not only did Jimmy share some serious alpha here, so did his partners, Redman and Tex-Mex Biomex, on that video. So Billy Goat Tales, premier community here in the space. Go follow these guys. But Jimmy, whether or not it's Billy Goat Tales, feel free to tell me I'm wrong. But like, if you are willing to find a good community of people who are going to be honest with you about where you are, where you want to go, how you can get there, and where they are,
yeah.
you can succeed here. Yes?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, probably myself and Billy have 50 plus years of combined business running. I mean, that's our motto, right? Givers gain. And
Yes.
it's so very true. There's takers in the world,
Facts.
but I have found in my life, the more I help people without a hand out expecting something in return has yielded me way more than I ever expected. We just got roped in at the Bitcoin conference. I'm going to Vegas to enjoy some time with my son. It was his first time in Vegas. We had rented exotic cars for the week.
Nice.
Um,
Yes.
and the next thing I know, day three of the conference, I'm shooting a music video with Lambo, with Cassius and Randy. And it's those types of things, right? I mean, I just help Randy out. I don't ask for anything in return.
Right.
And same with the Sin City guys. But it has come back to me, whether it be you know getting a dinner reservation at Hell's Kitchen, whether it's being in a music video, just all these little, as Billy likes to call them, golden nuggets just pop up in your path.
Yes.
And it's always been inherent of me. I like helping people. I'm in the IT business. I mean, it's not a whole lot different motivation than probably what most people in the medical field are in. They want to help people. They want to help people with their health. I want to help people advancing their technology, making their businesses more efficient, things like that. So, I mean, at the core of what we do, yeah, I mean, Giver's Game. We've got our 10 cornerstones. We've got the children's book. Billy did our first one. Redman just put the second one out. I'm on deck. We'll have the third book coming out later at the end of this year. And then Tony and Dave will follow behind. Me and my son, we were at the conference. Gary Cardone invites my son, not me,
Yes.
invites my son onto his show. He's
Yes.
like, I've never met someone so young, that's involved in Bitcoin. And and he loves it. I mean, he manages his own portfolio. I mean, he asked me for advice, but he's the one in there doing the buying and the selling. And I just always see that as giving him a leg up in life. I mean, I know I sure as hell didn't get any financial
Right.
education other than
Right.
from my parents. And that was, put money in your retirement account, put money in your savings account, which is just a boomer ass way to think.
Yep.
But my parents weren't big risk takers. My
And it was a
dad,
generational thing too. I mean,
no,
let's,
absolutely it was.
just
I mean,
was.
absolutely. I mean, it was at a time where one person could earn the income for a household. I
Yes.
mean, that just that
Yes. Yep.
is almost non-existent.
Yeah.
In
These
today's
days,
day and
right.
age.
Which is, quite frankly, part of why I am here, to try and help that generation and my grandchildren, to be quite frank, because, well, not to get down that road, but what's going on is, in our economy is not right. Stick to the channel, stick with Billy Goat-Tails, and get that information. Listen, I want to be respectful of your time. I know you took time out of your day here,
Oh
so
no, man.
I would like to encapsulize, and I'll give you a chance to do that as well, by saying, it doesn't matter where you are currently in your risk management profile. You can start small, take steps, and grow into where it is you're looking to be. And here in the space, you have the opportunity to rub elbows online and in person with people who have been there, done that, got the t-shirts, literally. So, I mean, like, literally. So be patient with where you are, be real about where you are, and follow some of these guys and take the wisdom from them. That's what I got to say about that to wrap it up. Jimmy, please take it away and wrap it up in your own words.
Yeah, I mean, again, I know myself, I know Billy feels the same way. I mean, we're available to people out there. We're normal people. We've achieved some things in life. Are we Elon or
Yeah.
Cardone status? No. But the things that we have achieved are very respectable. Billy churning through businesses like he has, I mean, man, that's there's something to be said for that,
Yeah,
right?
not
I
everybody
mean,
does that kind of stuff. Exactly.
I can't do it. I wouldn't want to do it. I think at the end of the day, really be smart, with your risk profile.
Yeah.
Have a plan.
Yeah.
I can't stress enough, whether you're starting a business or you're just investing in crypto, have a long term, a midterm, and a short term plan. And that short term and midterm, or I should say, goals will constantly be changing because you're going to
Yes.
be achieving those things, and
Yes.
that is just on that roadmap to get over here to that finish line of where we want to be. Because yes, there was a time when I was in my early mid 30s, just had started Blue Wire, thinking, man, am I ever going to be a millionaire? Am I ever going to? Is this ever going to happen? And when I quit thinking about that and started focusing on waking up every day, being disciplined, and being consistent and doing it every single day now for almost 23 years, and then I look up and it's like, holy,
Wow.
I
Have I
mean,
come a long way,
man,
right?
I've been here for a while and I didn't even realize it,
Yeah.
and there's just not really any getting around that. If you think you're going to fast track wealth, I mean, the only way that's going to probably happen is if you've got a wealthy relative and they leave you a bunch. You know,
Yes.
hopefully, folks got something out of what I said today, and it's probably stuff you've heard before. But at some point, you've got to realize when you're hearing this stuff time and time and time again, people are giving you the recipe, right?
Yes.
You just got to cook, and you got to
Right.
wake up and cook every day. You got
There
to
it
get tired of making the rice, but
is. There it is.
and it took me a long time to understand that. No, no, no. I can, get around doing all that, and I can get to step 4 before I do 2 and 3. And it's just not the case. I mean,
Right.
there exceptions, yes, few and far between.
Listen, folks, again, I implore you to go back and listen to this video again. This is the reason that I invite people like Jimmy on, to give you so much information that I've only experienced a piece of what he's talked about. And so now you're getting it from a guy that's got so much more experience, who's tied in with other people with even more experience. And you can learn, and I don't want to say shortcut, that's the wrong word, but learn so you can get there quicker.
Yeah, you can fast track boot camp,
Exactly.
If you open yourself up to it, and I'm going to give in to the process, right? The sooner you can do that, the sooner you're going to be successful. And I just hope someone was able to pull something from this conversation today. And,
yes.
Again, I'm sure it's things that you've heard. Maybe you don't believe them, maybe you just need to give into the process.
There you go. There it is. And on that, we're going to wrap this thing up. Thank you for being here, Jimmy. I really appreciate it. And guys, Jimmy will be back in another video, maybe next week. So go ahead and make sure you are subscribed and like, and we will be back in another video with more information to help you as you enter the cryptocurrency space. Thanks again, Jimmy.
Thank you, man. Y'all have a great day.
I hope you were able to get a lot of great information from that video. And again, special thanks to Jimmy from the Billy Goat Tales team for joining me to help get that information out to you. Again, links to Billy Goat Tales in the description. Make sure you're following them if you haven't done so already. This means it's time to continue the education, and you can do that right here in this video. Head on over, and I will see you there.